Alright everybody, Jay Alex again. I've been following along on our LT4 install series. So we got the supercharger finally installed on the engine, torqued down to specs. I got the ICT billet, other bracket all set up. Got the LT4 throttle body with ICT adapter, clocking adapter installed. About all that's left at this point, we're almost at the finish line, is to do the spark plugs. So if you guys remember in one of the previous videos, I'm going to go with the 41-128 spark plugs. Those are the LT4 OE spark plugs from AC Delco that GM recommends in their service manual. Feel free to go back to that video to understand how I came to the decision of installing those or choosing those. So right now though, for this video today, what we're going to be doing is installing the heat exchanger. So that's really the kind of last big thing that needs to be taken care of. So to do that, I'm gonna have to remove the grill here, and that's basically what we're gonna go through in this video is installing that and getting it all set up and getting ready to actually fill this thing up with some coolant and get things moving. So let's see here. So what we need to do to get access to the front of the condenser area and the radiator is first we need to remove this shield up top here. Those are just held on with some plastic clips, pretty easy to remove. Once that's removed, I have access to the 10mm bolts that hold on to the grill. There's also some 10mm bolts on the bottom part of the grill. To be able to remove those though, I need to first remove this fascia trim. It's obviously hard to see because it's the same color as the rest of the truck. And to be able to get the fascia trim off of there, I need to remove the on the side of the truck, on the driver and passenger side, the wheel well shields need to come off. Well, they don't really need to come out. Really just need to remove the trim piece to get access to a couple fasteners that are on the side of the truck, and then from there it's just undoing clips to get the fascia out. But what I'm going to do, since I already need to be in that area to remove the fascia trim, I'm going to go ahead and remove the wheel well shields. It's a lot easier to have those removed when I'm doing the spark plugs, and since I'm going to do the spark plugs anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and remove those. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Alright, so to do this, the only tools I'm going to need at this point to remove the splash shield off is my trim tool and a flat blade screwdriver. And then I got my handy dandy part keeper here. So I'm just going to start removing the plastic fasteners and keeping tabs on them by putting them in this egg carton, and we'll go from there. Okay, so actually now that I got the shield off, before I actually start removing any of the screws off the grill, we need to get this fascia off right here. And so like I mentioned earlier, to do that we're going to have to pull back this trim, and then since I need to do the spark plugs anyways, and it's a lot easier to access spark plugs through the wheel well, I'm going to go ahead and pull off this shielding inside as well as the trim. So let's go ahead and do that now. For this is pretty easy. So I just got a 9/32 socket and a T15 Torx bit. Okay, now that I get all the fasteners removed, I can go ahead and pull off this trim. So these are just mainly held on by a couple fasteners here. Once you have those off, you start from the front here and just give it a good pull and pull out the retainers. So you can see those are just retainers. Now that I got this guy off, I can pull out. This falls out. Alright, so you just need to remove these retainers here. This is what kind of secures the fascia to the fender here. And there's that one screw, hex screw that we took off earlier, the very first one. As simple as that. Now we just need to do it to the other. Alright, so we're on the passenger side and we're just going to repeat the same thing. Okay, now that I got the let's see, the trim removed, I can go ahead and start in the fastener that was right here. I can go ahead and start popping off this fascia here. So just a note, you don't have to take off that shield inside there. I was just doing that, like I mentioned earlier, just to do the spark plugs. Really what you just need to remove, or at least get out of the way, is this guy, so you have access to the fascia, and then that clip that went on here. So there is another, looks like a fastener up in here. Alright, so what I want to show here is, so there's the one fastener right here that needs to be removed, and there's another one right up in here. Let's see if I can, probably not going to be able to see that very well, but so with including removing this clip here, you also need to remove these two fasteners, and then it should just pop right off. Alright guys, so I went and got the grill off. Just as a quick recap on how we did that. So the first thing we got to do is pull off the shield up top, which was dead simple. Then next thing you got to do is pull off this trim. That way you can get access to two fasteners that are here. And obviously going to do that on the driver and the passenger side. Once you have that done, the next step is to start popping off this fascia. And the hardest part is really getting it started right here. That is probably the most hairy part. It feels like you're gonna break something. You know, when you first pop it off here on the edge, it's no problem. It's just right around this headlight area, it can get a little bit hairy. It doesn't matter which end you start from. I'd actually started from both sides. I got this side going, and then I moved over to the passenger side and got it going. Once you get past these pieces here all around this headlight, it's pretty dead simple, because this is the fascia down here, but basically once you get past the headlight with all this crap, this is where is the piece that's most difficult. You just have these clips to deal with, and these things are pretty simple. You just get underneath the truck and use like some sort of flat blade device. It could be a screwdriver or a plastic trim tool, and then you just pull up the clip and just work it all the way through. It's a lot easier if you do it underneath. But then once you have that pulled off, you have access to the fasteners down here at the bottom that hold on to the grill. So you can go ahead and pull all those off, and then the ones up top here. Once you have those pulled off, it's really just a matter of working along the grill piece here, and it just pops right off. So one thing that's really nice about this year that I have of my truck, I do not have the active shutters, so I don't have to worry about dealing with messing around with that thing. Should be pretty easy to mount the heat exchanger in here. There's definitely plenty of room. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna get this grill and this fascia out of the way, put it in a safe space where I'm not gonna scratch it all to hell and break it, and then we'll come back and deal with the rest of this. Okay, so I have, as you can see, the grill all taken off, and after some thinking, I think I came up with a potential solution for mounting the heat exchanger as well as the reservoir here. So luckily with this particular year and model of truck that I have, this GMC Sierra, I don't have the active shutter system on here, which really helped out in this situation. Why that is because for one, I don't have the shutter system here to contend with and try to work around, and I can makes it easy to mount this wherever I want, and then also utilize some of the unused mounting holes for the shutter system. So let's first start off with what the stock cooling system layout is, which I got here. So you can see, see if I can put this somewhere that you can see it better. Okay, so here, this is a diagram for the LT4 2015. It's a 2015 Z06 Corvette. So here we have our heat exchangers. This is how it mounts on the stock system. The stock is Z06. This heat exchanger here. We have our coolant, or the reservoir for the supercharger system, cooling system, and there are various hoses, the pump, and then the hoses. So kind of starting with the reservoir here, we got an upper hose and a lower hose. So lower goes to the passenger side lower heat exchanger, the upper to the passenger side upper heat exchanger fitting. And then on the driver's side, for the lower here, we have a hose going to the pump, and then on the upper, on the driver's side, that goes to the coolant manifold up here. And then on the pump, we have another hose that goes up to the coolant manifold. So this is how I'm going to mock up or mount my system. Same way, I'm going to have the passenger side, those two hoses going to the reservoir itself, and then the other side to the pump and to the coolant manifold. So that's how it looks on the stock 06, and that's what I'm going to go with on mine. So let me take you back over here to the truck, kind of show you what I did. Okay, so one thing that is not shown in that diagram is on the this particular Z06, there's a lower air baffle that this unit resides in. So in that baffle itself, there's these two studs here. There's holes on the baffle that it fits into, so you can slide it in there. And on the other side, to secure it into the baffle, there's this piece here. It's some sort of plastic piece. And you can see it's got the cutouts for where the studs would go, even though there's no studs on this side. And then the cutouts for the hoses. And then right here at the top, right here, there's this hole as well. And on the other, oddly enough, on the driver's side, there's just a fastener that goes through this hole and then clamps this piece to the heat exchanger, and then and it fastens itself into the air baffle. So that's how that's secured into the system. And I was wanting to use that air baffle for my truck here. I saw one online for like $80, and what I was going to do was, what I liked about it was the ducting. You know, the ducting kind of forced all the air to go into the heat exchanger, so you'd have a good laminar flow into the heat exchanger. It would seal off any leaks, you know, air being the path of least resistance. It would make sure that all the air was going through one area, keep it laminar. It would help me out with the static pressures inside, because that's the big thing about heat exchangers, whether that's your condenser, your radiator, or here for the supercharger. It's all about airflow, you know, wanting to have the coolest on the outside, hottest on the inside towards the engine bay. As many of you know, you're going to have cold air coming into the front of the vehicle. It's going to pass through your heat exchanger systems, and that's going to exit into the engine bay. And then even in the engine bay, you're going to want to have ducting to either have that hot air be directed out to the wheel wells or out through the hood. So I was really excited to maybe use the air baffle to kind of have a nice slick setup here with the ducting and all that stuff. But unfortunately, it's just looking at the parts diagram, it's just looks to be way too big to fit inside the grill area here, because I got these braces here to contend with. I got the mounts here for the grill itself. So, and then the other thing it would do is it would block off this area, which is for the stock airflow for the truck, for air to flow into the box in there, which I could cut out, but you know, it would be a lot of work, and at the end of the day, I don't know how much plastic could actually be left from all the cutting. So I decided to go ahead and just forego that. But out of that air baffle, so luckily with the kit, not really a kit, but the supercharger I bought that we covered in previous videos off eBay, it came with this piece, and I don't know why he gave it to me, but I'm really glad he did, because I was able to use this as a template. You know, I was really looking for an easy way to mount this. You know, if you look at most supercharger kits out there you get off commercially, whether that's Whipple or Magnuson or others, When it comes to the heat exchanger, they're mainly utilizing these braces here to mount a heat exchanger on. And I just ended up having to do the same thing since I wasn't going to do the air baffle route. And so what I was able to do was go to my local hardware store and pick up some angle strut here, and use this piece here that comes off the stock vehicle as a template to cut out the holes I need for the studs and for the lines, the cooling lines. So this actually ended up working really well. So what this is going to do is it is going to go over all of the studs and the coolant lines, and then give me a place here on the inside to secure onto that brace. So how I'm going to actually secure these down, I had to come up with a little trick for that. So I went to my local mom and pop hardware store and got some spacers. These are steel spacers. I just painted them black. In fact, I already went ahead and painted all these parts black here. But what this is it's big enough to go over the stud here and even the housing that the stud mounts into. And so this is going to provide the clamping force. I have another nylon stud or spacer that's going to go over here to take up some of this space so I can get a nut on here. And so that's going to be able to clamp this whole assembly down onto this bracket, so that way it's securely mounted on to the heat exchanger. So that's how I solved that problem. Now, the issue I had, because since this is a stock heat exchanger, and that being the case, there is no studs on this side. So I went to I went online to the place where I get my parts diagrams, and I got the part numbers for these studs, and so I went ahead and ordered these, and then I'm gonna go ahead and install them on these two bosses over here with epoxy. So that way I'll have 4 studs on this heat exchanger now, and then they'll be able to all securely be attached to the brackets using these spacers. And these are just stock spacers, like I said earlier, that I bought off from a hardware store. So that's how I'm going to mount the heat exchanger to the bracket, and then the bracket to these braces. Now, when it came to the brackets on the brace itself to attach to the heat exchanger bracket, I was trying to fab up my own with some aluminum flat bar here, and unfortunately, just due to the angles of the brace, you know, without really having a punch and die set, it's really difficult to bend these at the correct angles. So what I ended up doing was getting just some U-bolts here, and I went ahead and just painted these black and cut them down to size, and this will be going on the brace like so, and that will secure the brace to the heat exchanger bracket. And then with that, I'm using the flat plate here. That's going to go here just to give it a flat surface to secure on, since the U-bolts are obviously round. So hopefully make that a little bit more secure. And then what I decided to do as well is, you know, since this thing's going to be subjected to vibration, whether that's normal vibration while I'm driving on the road or just sitting here idling, or when I'm off-roading, what I'm going to do is, since I don't need my stock belt anymore, I'm going to cut that belt off, or cut that belt into pieces, and put some of that belt material on here. That's just to help with the vibrations, and to keep things kind of quiet, and make sure it doesn't, you know, wear the materials out on here. So that's what I got going on for the heat exchanger itself. And I'm going to mount that to the front of the vehicle. Now let's talk about the reservoir. This one, you know, there's all sorts of different ways you can connect it. And what I decided to do is I wanted to keep this reservoir out of the engine bay, because you know, why waste time and energy trying to route hoses from the engine bay into the heat exchanger when I can just keep the reservoir out here outside with the heat exchanger and make my hose routing shorter and just make it a lot easier. And so that's what we're going to do. So after I pulled off this grill and the fascia, you can see there's a lot of room in here, and this is perfect for the reservoir to be mounted. So it's going to be inside here in the bumper. It'll take away nice and clean, so that way, you know, number one, no one's going to really see it. Number two, is going to be protected from twigs and branches and just rocks and stuff from the different environments and conditions that I'll be driving in. And how I came up with a mounting system for that. So there's there's two tabs on this side and a tab on that side that they use in the stock setup. And so what I did, again going back to my mom and pop hardware store, I got some longer spacers. Here I just went ahead and colored them black. Just got a long bolt, a couple washers, and then again using the other part of the L strut piece here that I used for the brackets. I went ahead and fabbed up this mounting system for the reservoir, and it's on there pretty securely. I got, like we've been doing with all our fasteners, I got Loctite on here. Since this is zinc plated fastener, I put the primer on there. It's from 7649 Loctite primer. And so where this is going to mount is going to be up underneath the shroud here, inside the bumper area. So there's these holes here all over the place, you can see, and these are for the shutter system. So they have those speed lock tabs or washers, whatever you call it, or not washers, but speed lock brackets. So I went to the hardware store, picked up 3 of those, and I'm using these 3 in the bottom that would normally be reserved for active shutter system, and then made some fabbed up some aluminum brackets here that I also painted black, and I'm going to mount those to in 3 spots here, and then also mount on the other side, fasten those to this upper piece so that I'll secure this underneath the shroud. And then down here, where the bumper's at, you have a pretty large fastener here and one on the other side. And then what I'm going to do is take a piece of strut material and make an L bracket out of it. So then I'll remove those 2 screws, mount the strut material on one side, and then mount the other one here in the front. So then that way this will be secured very rigidly. It'll be secured here at the top with those L brackets, and then here in the front with the bumper bolts, the bumper screws. And then that will be really nice. So I'll have you know, everything up here in the front. These 2 hoses, I'm going to cut these, reuse these quick connects, but extend out the hoses and basically just route it up through the shroud and then right into the connectors. But they'll be all nice and tidy, pretty short routing for the hosing, and then all I got to do is route these 2, one to go to the pump and then the other one to go to the coolant manifold on the supercharger. So that's where I'm at so far, and I'm going to get ready to mount all this up. Went ahead and fabbed everything up, went ahead and painted it, got all the fasteners, and I'm going to start, I'm going to at least get this guy mounted. I can't mount the heat exchanger just yet because I'm waiting on those 2 studs over here that I can put on this side. So I'm not about to mount the heat exchanger just yet, but I'm going to at least get this guy mounted and then go from there. Alright guys, I got the bracket all installed for the reservoir here. You can see it's pretty solid, so I'm utilizing one of the fasteners here that goes into the active shutters that obviously, like I mentioned before, I don't have. Got one here, so two up top, and then down here I got fabbed up an L bracket to attach there, and then there, so I got 4 points of contact, and this guy's not going anywhere. And then got my hoses here to route to the heat exchanger. So probably could have came out a lot prettier, but it definitely works. Let me show you underneath how it looks. So this is what it looks like underneath, which is pretty cool. So I got access to the drain valve here if I want to drain this, and it's stuck up there pretty good. Don't have to worry about anything coming up here and damaging the reservoir. And from a front view, it's pretty inconspicuous. Probably really wouldn't be able to see it unless you were looking for it if you came up close. Alright, so that was a pretty big job just because there was a lot of fabrication. Obviously this wasn't a kit, just had to measure things out and kind of find a place for it, but I'm pretty happy with this location. So the only thing left is my heat exchanger here, which I'll have to wait until I get my studs that I was talking about earlier to come in, and then we'll finish that up. And then about the only thing left will be to route these hoses. Route the hoses over here, and then route the hoses up to the supercharger, and then obviously need to install the pump still. And still trying to find a place where I might want to mount that pump, but alright, so I'll come back when I get ready to get the rest stuff going. Okay guys, getting ready to mount the heat exchanger here with those custom brackets that I made. As you guys mentioned, or if you guys remembered earlier, I was talking about ordering these studs from GM to do this other side. Having a little bit of issue getting those parts. I put the order in for GM Parts Direct about a week ago, and it still says it's in progress, and I'm getting tired of waiting, so I'm going to go ahead and utilize a different method to do this, a different fastener. So what I did is I went to my local Fastenal shop here to see if they had anything that was similar to this. Didn't have to be exact, but at least where it could fit inside this hole, and at least having the flange here. But unfortunately they didn't have really anything that came really close to what I needed. But I did find some cap screws that they had. There was the number 1032. These are 1.5 inches long. They actually only sold them by the box. It was like $25, I think, for the nuts, all the nuts that came in a bag, and the cap screws that came in the box, and didn't feel like really paying that much money for all those fasteners and only really needing 2 of them. So what I did is I went to the whole hardware store, Home Depot to be exact, and luckily found the same fastener, just different color. This one's stainless steel and the other one's was like an anodized black. So I found those, and I'm going to be putting those inside here, which I'm about to do right now. So this is going to be a learning experience for me, most likely a little bit of challenge, like things have been already with most stuff on this project. What I want to do, it's probably a little bit hard to see on the camera, but so this boss here is completely countersunk all the way through, but it's stepped down inside, so there's a very narrow, there's a very short step inside there that looks like the head of the fastener sits on when they probably did these ones. Now, from the research I've done, there's 4 different ways that I've seen. There's probably more, and that I'm not aware of, that manufacturers can secure metal fasteners to plastic. One of them is called the, I think it's the heat stand method. So basically they heat up the fastener, and as it's hot they press that into the plastic, and the fastener having knurls, so that way the plastic will go inside the knurls and secure it down. Another method is the ultrasonic. There's also a cold pressed method that they use, and a molded method where they actually mold, I guess, the plastic material with the fastener in it. So I guess the way I'm going to do this is the heat stand method, I think it's called. So this is the fastener that the 1032 fastener, and this is metric, the ones that come from GM, and I was looking for a metric cap screw, but the head size just wasn't really a good fit. You know, this is just large enough, just small enough where it almost wants to fit inside this hole. And with some heat there and melting that plastic around it, it should just slide right in. And then as it cools down, it will secure the fastener inside there. So that's why I went with the US Custom Area units. Let's see, what else is I going to say? Yeah, so anyways, what I'm going to do is I got a little hand torch, and I'm going to, after I clean these surfaces off, you know, to get any, they usually have oils on these after manufacturing to keep it from corroding and whatnot. This one doesn't have a lot of it on there because it's stainless. But anyways, I'm going to clean these parts off, clean off the bosses, take my little hand torch, butane hand torch, and just heat up this head. I'm not going to get it cherry red, but I do want it to get hot enough where it's going to melt some of the plastic. The reason why I went with the cap screw, one, it fits easier, it fits better inside this boss, and the other thing is this cap screw's got some knurling on it, so it's a pattern that's been pressed into this into the fastener, so that way when this sinks into the plastic and the plastic cools, it's got something to grab onto that will keep it secured. And there's two factors that you know, I'm concerned about when this is all said and done. One is the pull-out strength. So that's, you know, if you just put a force on this directly parallel with the fastener, and you know, how much it takes to pull it out. And the other one is the torque out. So that's, you know, as you're tightening down the nut, as it puts torque onto the fastener, you know, it'll break loose and come out. So those are two factors that I'm going to try to combat, and hopefully this will work out. So not only am I going to utilize the plastic material as it comes up to a slight melting temperature and cool down to keep this secured, but I'm also going to use some hot snot. That's what I got here. So this is probably not a very good one. It's supposed to be industrial glue stick or hot snot. It's a no-name brand, so I'm going to put a little bit of this. If you guys are into bow hunting and make your own arrows, you'll probably recognize this from doing if you customize your arrows, make heavy arrows or light arrows. You know, there's a process where you usually put a little bit of a glue onto your insert before you insert into the carbon fiber or whatever type of arrow you're using. So I'm going to do this kind of the same method here. I'm going to, as this gets this cap screw head here gets warmed up, I'm just going to put a little bit of this glue on it and then sink it into the boss. And then maybe as a last step, depending on how well it looks like it's in there, I might put some plastic epoxy, like the Gorilla plastic epoxy or Loctite's plastic epoxy just to help secure it. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I just got these in a pair of vice grips, just so that way, as it's, you know, this is all going to get pretty hot, and I just got this is to help me handle it and kind of help me keep it straight as I put it in here. Alright, so this is just my little butane torch. I didn't get the normal one you'd usually see that has the big bottle. And get my brake clean. So let's go ahead and clean off the fastener. Get the surfaces prepped. Alright. Well, here it goes. Obviously, we want to move the torch around and try to evenly heat this. It's starting to blue the metal now, so it's probably getting pretty hot. I think the hardest part of this is going to be keeping this straight. Keeping it straight while I'm trying to seat it inside that boss. Let's see how hot that is. That's what it looks like. and give that time to cool down. And then while it's cooling down, I'm going to go refill my butane torch here. Okay, I got my next fastener ready to go. Surface is all prepped and cleaned. Same with on the boss too. Got my torch refueled. That's what it looks like. Can't say I got too much confidence in this, but I guess it's just what we're going to have to work with. This one's not as tight as I'd like it to be. This one here is pretty good. But let's give it a shot and see what happens. Alright guys, so before I button up the grill and fascia back together, just finished up mounting the heat exchanger, routing the hoses, at least to the heat exchanger, and I wanted to give you a shot of that since you can see it better with the grill taken apart. So as we saw earlier, here's my reservoir on my custom bracket here that's underneath the radiator shroud, mounted pretty solid. I tried utilizing the OEM hoses as much as I could, where it made sense to, and where I just figured it made more sense to use other hosing. I did such. So, for instance, in this top hose here, this goes into the top of the heat exchanger. So I'm using the OEM hose that came with the reservoir. I snipped off part of the bend, and here I attached a Gates 5/8 diameter, inside diameter hose to a 5/8 to 5/8 connector here, a barb, and then the rest of this hose is routed kind of underneath the shroud, up behind the headlight, and then pops out of the slots over here. Now, fortunately, I believe this is for the air intake, but that's okay because I got a surprise later on that's going to eliminate having to even use that. And then going into the top of the heat exchanger, and then same thing for the bottom one there, except for the bottom one, that was a 90-degree, or actually it was more of a U-type molded hose, so I just took that completely off and just did a 5/8 straight from the reservoir to the bottom of the heat exchanger here. Let's see, so yeah, you can see here I got the brackets all mounted. It's on there pretty solid. This is the side over here that I did my custom studs to because I was having issues getting those parts in. So far it's been holding up okay, but I have probably 50% confidence or lower that that's gonna last, so we'll see as it goes on. But for the routing on this side, so let's see, I have one of the hoses here goes to the pump itself, and the other hose goes to the intake coolant manifold that's on the supercharger. But I have pretty much finished with the front here. Got the heat exchanger mounted. It's mounted on there pretty solid. These custom brackets worked out really nice. So that's on there good. Got the hoses on both sides routed and on there. Got the reservoir all done. So Now that I'm done with the front of the truck, I'm going to go ahead and put the grill back on, and then when I get start working on the routing up top, I'll show you guys what I have in mind. Right now, what I'm kind of spiking out is I have the T-neck filler. So if you guys remember, normally have a little T here with a little tiny cap. I got rid of that and replaced it with this. The reason why is because I'm going to bring the system down to a vacuum with my airlift system, and this T-filler, number one, makes it easier to do, such that for the adapter fit in here versus that tiny little T-filler they had on the OE hose. And then also I like that I can actually see my coolant level in this. So I kind of fabbed up a L bracket here, made an aluminum, I spray painted. Thinking about mounting it here. I'm routing my hoses to that. And then for now I'm thinking about just mounting my pump down in the tray. I'm not done with that. I'll show you guys that when I start working on it again. But yeah, so that'll be the next step, and we'll be getting close to the end here. So let me finish getting the grill put back together, and then we'll move on to the top side with the T-filler and everything. I was gonna say one thing that to keep in mind. Oh boy, where can I find these? Actually, let me grab one over here. Probably could do this in a follow-up video, but just wanted to mention it. So a lot of the hoses that come with the heat exchanger system, they use these OE 90-degree connectors, and I don't have too many uses for them. What I really need is the straight connectors. Unfortunately, these things, I've gone to a couple dealerships, GM does not sell this as a serviceable part. You have to buy this part of assembly. You know, for example, one of the assemblies that I was looking at was like $200. That was for, you know, obviously the molded hose, all the connectors, and you know, obviously I'm not going to pay that. So that's pretty unfortunate, because these are really nice connectors. And you know, the other option that GM provided was to maybe use the heater core line connectors, so you can, you probably can't see it from over here, it's pretty far back there, but back there on the heater core lines, they have quick connector, or they have connectors that look like this, and unfortunately those are a little too big. They might work, but they actually referred me to a parts store, and decided to try to use one of these straight connectors, and this just does not work. So be mindful of that when you're looking for connectors. This doesn't have, so the part number there is 800-403. It doesn't have any dimensions or anything on here, so really kind of crappy. But yeah, this is obviously probably close to a 5/8. And that's fine. That fits in the hose perfectly. It's just this other side of the connector. You know, you see the locking mechanism's a lot different compared to what GM's got here, and this one's a lot better. It just works like it should. Of course, it does. It's OE. This thing is kind of crappy. It's got this stupid plastic clip in there, and it just doesn't work. So, still on the lookout for how I'm going to resolve. I need how I'm going to resolve my issue, because I need 2 more of these connectors, but not the 90, I need the straights. So anyways, just wanted to pass that knowledge on, because they're pretty hard to come by. But I'll keep my eye out and see if maybe there's an online retailer out there that sells these GM style connectors, and just, you know, independently by themselves, that I can purchase. But yeah, anyways, so I'm going to continue on here, and then I'll show you what I got set up. Alright guys, so before I button up the driver's side here, the splash shield, I wanted to first go ahead and wire up the ECT extension. So I got the 48-inch extension in, and that worked out perfect. So if you can see back there where the light's at, that's where the new location is for the ECT sensor. I have the extension running up back on the bulkhead there, and then from there coming up here, that shiny black cable there, and it runs underneath the supercharger where it'll plug into the extension cable. So I wanted to at least get that one done first, because I wanted to connect the connector, so that way I can come in here with degreaser and clean down the all that coolant from when I pulled out the block plug. I did the same thing for the passenger side. As I mentioned in one of the other videos, I had one of the spark plugs was loose, so some oil came out, made a mess. So before I buttoned up that side, I went ahead and cleaned that all down with degreaser. So just chugging along here. So I'll come back when we're ready to finish up the... Alright guys, before I finish installing this pump, I wanted to show you what I've done for mounting this. So as you guys know, in the parts video that I showed this pump in, it came with the bracket. So that's that silver piece down there. There's also a little bracket on this guy, on the pump itself, that attaches to these screws down there. So to fasten this in, I'm going to use the battery tray, auxiliary battery tray here on the driver's side. And so what I did is I removed 4 of the fasteners out of that battery tray. That's these guys here, and replaced it with these longer, I think this is an M6 by 1 millimeter pitch, and this is, I think, 50 millimeters long. Replaced those 4 fasteners with these 4 that I got from a hardware store, and then you can see I got a spacer in here. So the spacer is going to keep this bracket off the tray, because if you guys know about these trays, they got a strange profile down there, and so to make things level and not have to mess with that profile, I'm using these spacers to stand off the tray itself that the bracket's going to go onto. And then what I did was, for the rear back there, I took a piece of aluminum flat bar that I purchased from a hardware store and cut this down to size and drilled a couple holes here to mount the aluminum to the tray via the spacer and the new screw, and then another 2 holes there that actually mounts the pump bracket to the aluminum bar. Now up here in the front, it's a little bit different. The hole is up here, and I didn't want to drill a new hole into the battery tray. It's pretty difficult to get this thing out. I mean, the screws come out pretty easily, but there's a tab down here that makes it difficult to remove. Either you're going to have to loosen up the fuse box here to remove it, or take out the washer fluid. So I didn't want to do that, and I didn't want to pop a new hole in it. So I'm still going to use the same concept that I did in the back here. These 2 screws over there. I'm going to have another aluminum flat bar securing those 2 down, so they act as one unit. And then I have some shorter brackets here that's going to go at an angle. That's going to allow this all to fit together as a triangle and to match up with that hole. So that way up here at the top, everything's rigid and kind of acts as a single unit when it comes to clamping force and keeping it rigid and sturdy. So that's how I got the bracket set up. I'm going to finish installing this guy, and then what I need to do next is I want the pump to mount like this. So you can see I got my hoses here ready to go. This one goes into the water coolant there on the supercharger. This one goes right into the pump, and then there'll be another hose that's going to go into the pump. So in this particular situation that I have, it makes more sense to mount it like this, with the pump, the nipple coming off of the pump there facing the engine. So what I need to do is there's some metal tabs here I need to bend and rotate this bracket around about 90 degrees. That way it lines up with the fasteners down there. So once I get that all ready to go, I'll come back and let you guys see what it looks like. Alright, so that's what the finished bracket looks like. And it's setting off that battery tray, I don't know, probably about 1/2 inch to 1 inch due to the spacers. And that thing is not going anywhere. It's on there really solid. So that's great. So now we got that installed. Now I just need to work on this bracket on this pump, rotate it 90 degrees by loosening those tabs there. And then I'll be able to install it via those 2 screws here on the side on the rabbit ears. And then we'll have the pump all finished. Right now I got everything Loctited down, so that way it's not going to go anywhere. And okay, so I'll move on to the pump and then we'll come back. Alright guys, I just wanted to show you this pump. So there's 2 little tabs right here you got to loosen to get this to separate. And then you're better off just pulling this bracket in half. It's a 2-piece bracket. And the reason being is because if you can see here, there's kind of a profile cut out, looks like teeth, around the perimeter of the pump. Looks like this rubber piece here is attached to the pump itself so it doesn't spin. And then you got this bracket that goes into this teeth-like profile to keep it from spinning. So it's pretty simple. Now I have it mounted the way that I want. So I just need to tighten up these tabs here and then be all set to go. Alright, another tip for you here guys. So I'm getting ready to get the pump mounted down there nice and solid. And I'm getting ready to do the hosing. If you can, try to utilize the OE hosing that comes with the supercharger system, or if you have to buy it separately, it's worth it. Reason being is you can see here on this is a 5/8 hose, but on this side it widens open quite a bit. You can see in the hole it's quite a bit bigger than 5/8. So what I'm doing here is, this was a molded U-bend that went from the pump to the heat exchanger. So what I did is I cut it into a 90 and got a 5/8 to 5/8 straight barb. So I'm going to have basically just that little nub coming off of the pump and then going into this 5/8 hose here that I have going into the supercharger. So just a tip for you. If you can, it does come in handy, and mainly it's only on the hoses for the pump. The diameter of that pump nipple on both discharge and the incoming is larger than the rest of the tubing. So I'll continue on. Alright guys, so I got the heat exchanger finally finished on plumbing. So mainly the upper part here, we already finished the lower one a while back, and now I finished up the upper here. So one thing that I just want to mention that's a little bit inconvenient, but these I think I was talking about earlier, these stock connectors here, you'll find these on the heat exchanger itself, and also up here on the intake coolant manifold. If you can, like I mentioned before, try to get these, shop around too. You know, there's some sites are pretty expensive, you know, between $80 to $90, even more, just for maybe 2 of them. Now, one thing to keep in mind is GM does not consider this independent serviceable part, meaning You might get a part number for it, which I do have a part number for this guy, but you can't purchase this alone. It usually comes with another assembly, as I mentioned earlier, and that can be pretty costly. So keep that in mind when you're shopping around for them. But they are really nice to have. They fit well. It's OE quality, so it's gonna work properly. The only option you got besides that is what I mentioned earlier, using the some aftermarket brand, or generally what you're probably gonna find is the heater core connectors, and they're just, in my opinion, not as good. But anyways, let's move on to what I got going on here. Alright, so let's take a look at the hose routing diagram here. So this is, again, as I showed before, the stock Z06 supercharger cooling system routing. So what we did earlier is this lower part here, so mainly the stuff that sits out in the front. So that would be in the reservoir container, and keep in mind that's a completely sealed unit minus just the ports for the hoses themselves, the heat exchanger itself, and then the hoses coming out to going back to the pump and to the supercharger. And so what I finished up here is the upper part, and I did something a little bit different in this setup. So like I mentioned before earlier, I got lucky with this eBay supercharger that I got. It came with, as you saw on the base parts, a lot of what's on this sheet of paper here. So I try to utilize the hoses that came with it as much as I could, and then where I couldn't, as I mentioned earlier, I just purchased some Gates 5-inch internal diameter hosing to route. And mainly where that came into play was what I'm going to show here, which is on the upper part of the cooling system. So one thing I did change, so what you'll notice is right here is your stock filler tee that people use to fill it, either top off the system or to refill the system. And I don't really like this one. It's just, it doesn't work very well for my airlift system. It's just a really small T-filler to use. So what you guys saw in one of the other parts videos, the base parts videos, is I purchased another GM, a different GM part, that T-filler over here. So this is off of some other GM application, and I routed that into the system. And so what you'll see here in the picture, in this diagram, is on the output, it goes to the filler. And so we're using like connectors, and ideally I wanted straight connectors, but I was just trying to reuse what I had, and all I really had left was these 90 degrees. So maybe in the future, if I get a hold of some straights, I'll replace them, but for now this comes out at a 90. And then I just got, I reused this hose here that has a nice bend. This was a molded U, and I cut it in half and used this with a 5/8 straight, 5/8 to 5/8 straight barb into Gates 5/8 hose. And then again over here, we're using the other part of that OE molded hosing into my T-filler. And what I really like about this is, number one, I get to see my fluid level. So the way it's set up here is down at the bottom is the hot fill, and for cold fill they recommend being between that line and to this upper bolt, this upper screw. And then from the T-filler it goes into the top of the heat exchanger. And then, as I showed before, the pump, you guys probably can't see that very well, but you already saw how I got the pump mounted earlier. But I have again, using some of the OE hosing that I got with my supercharger that's coming off the pump, going into another 5/8 to 5/8 straight barb, going into a 5/8 internal diameter Gates, and then going into a 90 degree 5/8 to 5/8 barb to another 5/8 internal diameter Gates hosing, and then into my OE stop connector. And then the last hose down there that we talked about before off the pump, being that the nipples on the pump are much larger than 5/8, I utilize the stock hosing to plumb from the pump to the heat exchanger, and that's same for both of these guys that I showed earlier. So that's how I got the routing set up. So it's identical to the routing that we have here. The only difference is I removed the stock T-neck filler and replaced it with another T filler off another GM application. Still got a 15 psi cap, which I had to purchase separately. So got that finished. Pretty happy with it. The only thing I'm not happy with that I'll probably replace in the future is I don't like these chrome shiny connectors. The pipe clamps, and then these 90-degree OE connectors. But hey, it works for now. So happy with that. So that is pretty much the routing. This is the final routing for everything. You can see I got my wiring harness over there, getting ready to put that together for the pump. But this is what it looks like. So the cooling for the supercharger plumbing is all finished. In an upcoming video, what I'm going to do is get ready to fill the system, and we're going to do that with the airlift, put it in our vacuum, and check for leaks. One thing I am watching out for is this connector here. So as you guys saw in one of the previous videos, I believe it was the inspection video, it looked like these these nipples on this coolant intake manifold, looks like it was either dropped or hit something really hard and got kind of damaged, and I forgot about that. I went to go seat this connector, and there was a sharp piece, and it nicked the O-ring inside. So keep an eye on that, suspecting that might leak. But that's the purpose of doing these either a pressure test or a vacuum. Bring these in a vacuum is to check for stuff like that. So I'm going to wrap up this video. So I think I shared everything in here. There's probably better ways to route this. Feel free to, for folks out there that are interested in this, doing it a different way. This is just the way that I did it. And appreciate you for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.